Helen Zille, thank you so much for joining us. And the focus really on that issue, jobs, talking 6 million jobs and growing the economy by 8%. How are we going to achieve all of this?
Yes, we're talking about 6 million real jobs, that is sustainable jobs. And we're going to achieve that by growing the economy at 8%. And we're going to grow the economy at 8% by implementing the DA's policies if we win an election, which we'd really like to do, but which is up to the voters to give us a chance. All of our policies have been modelled very expertly, and the conclusion has been that these can lead to 8% growth. They should lead to 8% growth. We've got everything going for us, and if we fix education, create policy certainty, invest in our people, and do all the things we need to do, we will grow at 8% and we will create 6 million jobs over the space of a decade.
So the issue of showing leadership in the economy, I see it features highly in your economic policies, but also you talk about labor laws, that
Absolutely.
They need to be flexible. What do you say to those who will say that's an assault on labor rights?
Not at all. In fact, the best thing we can do for workers is to create many, many more jobs, because then there are more workers. Currently, there are so many people unemployed dying to get a job. And making it easier to create a job and get a job should be at the heart of government's economic policy. The trouble at the moment is that nobody knows what the government's economic policy is. The National Development Plan says one thing, but it isn't being implemented, and another plan says another thing. The new growth path and all of these kinds of things. So there's no certainty, investors don't know where they are, and therefore they don't invest and create businesses that grow jobs.
I find your proposals on the issue of government quite interesting. You talk about professionalizing the civil service. How would you go about doing that?
Well, that's critical. You've got to take politics out of the civil service. You've got to separate the party from the state. The state must serve all the people. The government must also serve all the people. And it must never become politicized in that some people are getting more favors than others, depending on their political parties. Everybody must get equal treatment by the government and by the state. That is DA's policy.
And you talk about cutting, saving the fiscus up to 30 billion rand in terms of efficiencies. Yes. How would you go about doing that?
Well, let's just take a practical example. In land reform, everybody knows that land reform is riddled with corruption, is completely inefficient, and has not succeeded in getting land back to people who have a right to it, nor in retaining the productivity of the land. And that is very, very serious indeed. And an economist, an agricultural economist, has estimated that so far we have spent 58% of what it would have cost to buy a large amount of South Africa's farmland. In fact, 58% of South Africa's farmland we have already spent on failed land reform. So the money that we've spent on failed land reform, we could have bought at purchase price 58% of all farmland in South Africa. Now that shows you just how much inefficient government wastes.
But hang on, Helen, to what extent does the issue of the willing buyer, willing seller model come into play here?
Of course
the whole issue of the property prices, the land prices always seem to go up exponentially when government is the buyer.
But the example that I've given you proves that in fact, on the money that has already been spent, we could have bought 58% at market prices. But if the government is buying land, they must do so intelligently. They mustn't go out there and say, hey, we want to buy land in this area. Then, of course, people push their prices up. They must send ordinary people in, Mr. Kumalo, Mr. Smith, Meneer van der Merwe, to buy up land. And he can be a government official and no one needs to know that. You see, government has to buy land intelligently to ensure a proper, fair price, and to ensure that the people who need it get it and keep the land productive.
How intelligently? How do you buy it intelligently?
Well,
when the realities of the market dictate what they dictate.
Yes, but you see, you don't have to go into an area and say, hi, we're looking to buy land here. Everybody who wants to sell their farm. That's an obvious incentive for people to push up their prices, although many people don't. Many people, in fact, have offered the government their land, but the system is so inefficient that nothing ever comes of it. They never hear from the government again, even though they go to the government and say, we want to sell our land to you. So if you want to buy land intelligently, you look for land that's for sale. You put in a fair offer, and often when people want to sell their land, they'll accept your offer. You don't go in there and say, we want to buy all the land in this area, then obviously the price goes up.
Helen, you had a vast of policy issues that you addressed here. And one of the challenges for you, some analysts have said that you are trying to be all things to all people. Given the message that you have sent out here today, do you believe that this manifesto is sellable to all constituencies, more critically the constituencies where you did not do so well in the past, the predominantly black wards in various areas?
This is definitely not sellable to all people, but no party can be for absolutely everybody. This manifesto is for everybody who believes in the Constitution, who believes in non-racialism, and who believes in redressing the legacy of the past and the injustices of the past. This is a manifesto for everyone who wants jobs and who wants change that brings jobs. And the people that want that, yes, this manifesto speaks to them.
Right, and then you are using your track record in the Western Cape as an example, and you're saying to people, give us a chance so that we can implement what we implemented in the Western Cape. But a lot of the people that are your critics in the Western Cape are saying that you are not really that successful, that there's two Western Capes. There's a Western Cape reality for white South Africans and a Western Cape reality for black South Africans. What do you say to that criticism?
Look, there is still a lot of poverty in the Western Cape, but you must remember the province has grown by almost 30%. 30% increase in population in 10 years. And that is mostly because very, very poor people have come to the province because they see better opportunities, they see more jobs, they see better service delivery. But it's not us that are saying that. The national government's own statistics say that over 90% of all people, particularly the poor, living in the Western Cape have access to proper basic services. That is an incredible achievement. There's lower unemployment in the Western Cape, there's higher economic growth in the Western Cape, and that's why the population is growing.
That thing of characterizing the problem and also featuring in that characterization the issue of people moving from one province to another has landed you in a lot of trouble. Explain the position. I mean, the issue that people say, you hear people saying they cannot really trust you because you said people are refugees in their own country. Explain what is the position then?
Well, we have to be absolutely honest. People in provinces that are run badly, and everybody knows that the Eastern Cape is run worse than any other province. To get opportunities, they have to go somewhere else. And the money to service those people doesn't go to the provinces that they go to, it goes to the Eastern Cape. And so what we're saying to the national government is, please, 30% population growth in 10 years in the Western Cape, and when any population grows in 10 years by 30%, it is enormous. 46% growth in 15 years. That is quite extraordinary. We need the resources because we want to service those people. And we have serviced everybody. The poorest of the poor get far better services in the Western Cape than they do in any other province.
Just a final one then, Helen. The whole issue of Mampela Rampele, it will continue to haunt you during the election campaign. People will keep reminding you of this episode. Are you over this episode and the damage done? But that's not what your earlier leaders said right here on eNCA, that it will take some time to actually recover from this episode, because you did dedicate some time towards making this merger work, even though you spent about 4 years trying to get it to work, and it didn't work out.
My view is that, in fact, it's behind us completely. Ahang isn't registering on the opinion polls anymore, and most of their voters have come to the DA. So, in fact, far from having to recover, we've gained significantly because Ahang isn't a player in this election anymore. And indeed, probably as a result of Ahang's voters coming to us, we'll get about 6 to 7 more seats, which is a wonderful thing.
Right. Helen Zille, thank you so much.
Know more about your world.
eNCA.com